So without further ado, I'd like to be able to introduce Dr. Wong. Dr. Davidicus Wong is a full-time family physician at the Primary Care Medical Center. He's been a Burnaby resident since childhood, and he received his medical degree from the University of British Columbia. He was the inaugural board chair of the Burnaby Division of Family Practice, and then moved to the new role of physician lead in 2013. Davidicus integrates mindful meditation, acupuncture, and clinical hypnosis in his full-service family practice. For many years, he's been an active supporter of both his profession and our community. And it gives me great pleasure to introduce Dr. Davidicus Wong.
Thank you very much, Jeff. And thanks for Veronica for setting this up. So we've been talking mainly about kind of surviving, staying at home, staying isolated, and so we don't get sick and don't get our loved ones sick too. But I think it's time that we move on to learning the skills for thriving. Instead of the new normal, I think we can be better than normal. So I'll be talking about practical strategies that we can use now just to get through this pandemic and actually come through stronger and better when we're all together with all our loved ones again. So, and these are tips you can use anytime to manage anxiety, strong emotions, as well as the day-to-day stress that we encounter all the time. So these little signs you see on the right side of the screen are pictures I took when I got my first haircut out during the pandemic. And I realized that these weren't on stick-on signs. These are actually tiles that were permanently affixed in Metrotown. So we know that the changes that we're going through are going to be around for a long time, but we're definitely making progress. So I'm hoping that by the end of our talk, we'll feel pretty assured that we're on the right track, and you'll feel more assured. So I do work for the Burnaby Division of Family Practice as well as for my patients. So I work for the community as well as most importantly, the patients that I see day to day. Some of you might be listening today as well. And if you want to get on the division's website, which has great information on COVID-19 and resources to support you, look at divisionsbc.ca/Burnaby, and that'll be on the references that'll be given to you as well at the end of the talk. So 3 big things I want you to take away at the end of this talk is, number 1, you are not alone. Number 2, you have the strength and the support to make it through. And number 3 is, together, we're going to come through this stronger and more connected than ever before. So I'll remind you about these, but I hope what I talk about will really help you really believe and reinforce these 3 positive messages. So you are not alone. We're all really part of a bigger whole, and we've just realized that so many essential workers have been continuing to work and changing the way they work to keep us healthy, keep us safe. And there's so many people that make the day-to-day life that we depend on so important. So I think everyone who's out there is a hero. Everyone that's looking after themselves and their loved ones is a hero as well. The other way you're not alone is you're not alone in how you're feeling. What we're feeling, the stress, this anxiety, feeling really blue and down, feeling really uncertain, this is a normal response to these circumstances. And I promise not to say we're going through a challenging time or extraordinary times, because that's turned into almost like a cliche, although it's true. And you do have the strength and the support to make it through. And we'll be talking about some of those supports shortly, where if you do need extra help, no matter who you are, any member of the society in our community, there is hope available. So there's been a wonderful collaboration, not just the healthcare providers, but a lot of great community organizations that have been working behind the scenes all the time, and they've really come through to work with the health authority, with all members of the community, and the Division of Family Doctors to really make sure that all those that need help can get help. So it's been a tremendous showing of care for the whole community. So you have the strength and the support to make it through this. So we have the ability to manage our emotions. So I'll be talking about some key emotional health skills that we can apply day to day to manage difficult emotions, like when we're feeling blue or feeling stressed out. We can expand our perspective. So sometimes our old way of looking at things haven't worked out. So one thing we've seen in the pandemic around the world is it shows where we could do some things differently, how we can protect the more vulnerable people in our population, and where the holes are in our support systems. So it's shown us how we can make things better. So it's kind of expanded our perspectives as well. But changing our perspective can really change how we're feeling enabled and in control of the situation rather than feeling so uncertain. And again, we do have community supports for every person in our community. And finally, we're really better together. None of us is an individual. We're part of a greater whole. So every one of us is important. And finally, together, we're going to come through this stronger and more connected. So I'm hoping that you will have that kind of vision in your heart and in your mind, how you'll be coming through this stronger, calm, more peaceful, and we're going to come together as a society even stronger, more cohesive, and feeling more connected than ever. So you're not alone in how you're feeling. Like, we're all feeling anxious and stressed with the uncertainty and worries about our own health, the health of our loved ones, worrying about housing, how we're going to make ends meet, worried about finances. A lot of people are out of work. A lot of businesses are struggling through. And a lot of people are working, and it's very stressful where they are working as well. So you're not alone, but we're all having our own experiences. And I think sympathy for one another brings us together. But if we can share that support for people in your neighborhood, other people you're in touch with that are suffering in different ways. So we're all here. We're all feeling sad. And we're all grieving. We're grieving. Some of us it's really intense, grieving loved ones or patients or family members that are unwell. But we're also losing those things that are part of our everyday life that give our lives meaning and make us feel more connected with nature and with one another. So those rituals and little, we thought were silly things, were so meaningful to us. So we really miss those things as well, those things that give our life meaning. And if you've had difficulty sleeping, you're not alone. I have too. All of my colleagues have. Waking up in the middle of the night, having crazy dreams. This is almost a worldwide phenomenon that our sleep has not been normal during COVID-19. Or feeling lonely and isolated. So even though we can connect online, it just doesn't feel the same as just seeing people day to day. My colleague and I are really drained. We're on the telephone and doing video calls to all our patients. So your family doctor is still in the clinic or in the hospital or in the office looking after patients, but most of it is kind of virtual. And although we love seeing our patients online and we like hearing their voices, it's not the same as the hands-on care that we get day to day. So even we're feeling quite isolated, even though we're communicating with our patients all the time. And some of us are feeling kind of helpless and hopeless just because of the situation, how we're seeing the situation. So I'm hoping by the end of this talk that you'll have that less of the sense of helplessness because you'll know what you can do in your situation for others and for yourself, and that you will have hope. So you will not feel that sense of hopelessness that makes us feel more down or depressed. Jeff will also remind us of this. So these are some resources from community teams that have been around all the time, but they've really come together. So on our Burnaby Division website, or you could just look up burnabycoronavirus.com, and then you can see the resources that are available. And there's quite a broad range. And this is put together with our primary care network, which again is that cooperation of our community organizations as well as the family docs, our division, and the health authority. So there is free counseling available if you're a Burnaby resident or a patient of a Burnaby doctor. So looking at that website, you can click on and you can apply online, and then someone will be in touch with you. There's also a variety of community supports. So when you're online with coronavirus.com, burnabycoronavirus.com, you can click on these links and you can see there's help for youth and teens and families, those that are underhoused, those that need some assistance with finding financial support, people that need help in getting a source of food, healthy food, which is so important during this time. Extra help for seniors, not just help in grocery shopping and getting things done, but also social support, because many people are feeling quite isolated, staying in their homes and staying physically distant. So there's a host of resources there, so please check them out. Even if you feel you don't need any of these resources now, check them out because there's a good chance that somebody you know, a neighbor or a loved one, would benefit from some of these supports. So please take a peek at them and share them with others. These are other resources that are really helpful from the mental health perspective in the Burnaby community. There's the Canadian Mental Health Association, which is Canada-wide, which has a lot of free resources online, including cognitive therapy that I'll be talking about, and other supports and resources. Burnaby Mental Health, it works through Burnaby Hospital, but they do counseling for when we're feeling down or depressed or anxious or going through a crisis as well. So this is through referral through a physician, through the emergency, or you can refer yourself or a loved one as well. Camry Child and Family Services in South Burnaby, and that's counseling services for children and their families. Anxiety BC is excellent. It's an online resource. There's a great app that kids and young people like to use called MindShift. So that's really helpful with quick tips for calming anxiety, how to calm a panic attack. So take a look at their site as well if you know someone that's been suffering from a lot of anxiety. And there's the Mood Disorders Association of BC, and SAFER, which is an organization for suicide prevention and assistance for family members as well as those having dark or difficult thoughts. So let's talk about stress. We won't talk too much about the source of stress because we know what the number one is right now. But one of the keys that I've learned from managing stress is recognizing where you have a sense of control. Because we feel overwhelmed if we just have too much to deal with, but we also feel even more overwhelmed and anxious and sometimes burnt out if we feel that we have no way of managing the stress. So it's important to recognize at what point of and what part of the stress can you manage? What do you have to accept for the time being? And what portions or what things can you control? So identify the sources of stress. Make sure you have all the facts. And that's so important with COVID-19, where you're getting your facts. So rely on the daily talks from Dr. Henry and Adrian Dix, our Minister of Health. Good, reliable, honest guidance and advice of what's going on with COVID-19. The BC Centre for Disease Control and the Burnaby Division website, burnabykoronavirus.com. Good, reliable information and always up to date. Be careful about relying on articles you see in Facebook because many of them are not entirely accurate and some of them are even dangerous. And of course, if you have any questions that pertain to your health, don't hesitate to call your family doctor. So family doctors are still in their offices and we'll see patients that need to be seen, but we can manage many things on telephone and on the video as well. So secondly, are we reacting in proportion to the stress? Recognize the things you can change and control and accept what you can't change, but assume responsibility for what you can. And recognize where you have choices. So having a sense of choice, some sense of control is empowering. It kind of lifts us out of feeling helpless. So it lifts us away from feeling anxious. And it will prevent us from falling into hopelessness, where we have no hope of being under control again. So this is that serenity prayer. Grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, courage to change the things I can, and wisdom to know the difference. So let's look at the facts about COVID-19. And we know a lot more, and a lot more that we know is a lot more reassuring than we knew 2 or 3 months ago. So we know that it's pretty well always spread by respiratory droplets. So those are just a little bit of droplets that spray when we cough or sneeze, sometimes if we're breathing heavily with exercise, or if we say it and spray it at the same time. That's why we need to keep that 6-foot difference or the 2-meter distance from another person, because those droplets quickly fall to the ground. So they may fall and land on things, or people might touch their face or mouth with respiratory droplets that are infected, and the objects that they touch might be contaminated. So that's why we do the careful hand washing. So if you're washing your hands carefully, all parts of your hands, there's nothing magic about singing happy birthday twice. You really have to clean all portions of your hands, your fingertips, between your fingers, the backs and up to your wrists, using soap and water. It usually takes about 20 seconds. But if you just sing happy birthday twice and don't really do all those motions, it's like singing the Barney cleanup song and just crossing your arms, not doing anything. So go through the motions and clean every part of your hand, either with the alcohol sanitizer or soap and water. Anytime you're going to touch your eyes, nose, or mouth, make sure your hands are clean first. Wearing a mask is helpful if you can't keep that 6-foot difference. So there might be some situations when you're grocery shopping where you're going to be much closer to people and there's that small risk that they might cough and you might get exposed to droplets that might go into your face. So wearing a mask or something to protect your eyes like sunglasses or regular glasses or safety goggles might be helpful for those few times when you're less than 2 meters or 6 feet away from somebody. And definitely if everyone wore masks, that will reduce the risk of spreading it to other people. And of course, some people that cannot remove their masks if they're in and are having troubles breathing, like children under 2 shouldn't be wearing masks at all. But the key is keeping that distance and also washing your hands. And really, we've done really well in BC, and that's why we're starting to open up over the past couple of weeks. that, we have an amazing society and amazing leadership where they've told us what to do. We've been pretty compliant and adhering it because we care about our community and care about our loved ones. So we've actually done amazingly well in stopping and slowing down the spread. So relatively few cases being identified with all the testing we're doing every single day. So it's pretty amazing. So we're in a much better, safer position now. And by the way, all the patients that I've tested in my practice have turned out to be negative, even those that had pretty convincing symptoms. So that's a great relief. And we're likely to have a vaccine, maybe in a year or so. So there will be an end to this. But if we control and know who has it in the community, once we have an antibody test, we'll be in much better control over the next couple of months. And remember, your family doctor is always there for you. So don't hesitate to contact them. And if you have troubles finding a family doctor, if you don't have one, then contact the Burnaby Division of Family Practice. We have a lot of special people attaching people to new doctors, great new doctors that really are committed to your care. So the daily things about looking after yourself is what I call the daily management of stress. And I'd like every parent out there to imagine being a good parent to yourself. One of the questions I received before we put the talk together was really a busy mom. We're trying to, how do I do all these things? How do I find time for exercise or to relax and do these things? And I think the number one thing is, just like on the airplane, you have to put on your oxygen mask before you put on the person's mask next to you. So you have to make sure that you are well in order to be the best caregiver or parent or spouse or child in your family as well. So look after yourself to make sure that you're maintaining your health. So we have to kind of carve out and make the time as a priority. So somehow finding exercise, somehow making sure that we're not skipping our meals, and then somehow having time to ourselves and time to talk with our supports. So number one, you say as a parent, is go out and play. And it's not when your kids are driving you nuts, it's when you know they need to get some exercise and get that energy out. So we have to do that too, but we need to do it and maintain some good social distances. So it's really important to get out of the house, especially in this great weather, to go for walks. You can still keep your distance and be totally safe from picking up infections and the coronavirus. So exercise every day.
Dave, I know that you mentioned this, but there was a question around this, around having tips to make time to do things that are helpful. During this time, she's talking about being run ragged with commitments for family. She knows she needs how to take care of herself, but there always seems to be something more important to do, like feed my child, go to the bathroom, file my taxes, unclog the drain. I know how busy you are in your life. And I know just from talking to you earlier today, one of the things that you've been able to do is find ways to incorporate that exercise into how you get around in a day. Is that kind of the way things we need to find our opportunities?
Yeah, we need to find the opportunities. We all get into our routine. So my routine pre-COVID-19 was to wake up at 5:20 in order to fit that exercise in, and then I'd be at the pool and do my usual 1 hour swim every morning at the community pool. But of course, now the pool is closed. So I've had to find another way of getting exercise. So I decided I could cycle to work and cycle home at the end of the day. So turning something that I have to do anyway into a way of getting exercise and also being in nature. So sometimes we'd have to be opportunistic about it. And that exercise for a busy mom might be going for a walk with the kids. Maybe the only time to meditate when my kids were young was actually when I was in the washroom and I could lock the door. That was actually the private place for meditating as well. So I know with busy moms with a young family, the most stressful time is that time of their life because they're always on 24/7. And the happiest time is sometimes going shopping, which we can't do as much during the pandemic, or when you go to the washroom by yourself. So I have great sympathy and compassion for moms out there. But moms have to remember they have to have compassion for themselves. They don't have to do everything perfect. So you can serve a healthy meal to your children without it have to be picture perfect. That good enough is actually good enough at these times. So make sure you're providing healthy food, but make sure you're eating at the same time as your children do too. And of course, there are emergencies like the plugged drains and the plugged toilets, and we always have to deal with them, just like we have to deal with emergencies every day in the office. But we also have to set up that kind of routine of self-care as part of a routine and fitting in that exercise somehow. And some people are lucky and they have the exercise equipment at home, like an exercise bike that they can use once the kids are in bed and sleeping.
Yeah, and I think that point that you make, I mean, it's just, that how important it is to, for your own mental health, for your kids. If you can maintain your own mental health, that's going to serve your kids and your family that much more, kind of, rather than thinking you come last. That seems to be a really critical point that you're making.
Exactly. Yeah. So self-compassion, loving yourself and knowing you deserve to be loved and cared for the same way you're looking after your kids and your loved ones. And we'll look a little bit later, because when we're stressed, we behave and act differently and feel things differently. So we'll look at that important interaction, why looking after ourselves and managing stress is so important. Again, don't skip those meals, eat with the kids, plan your meals ahead of time. And remember, there's some assistance through Burnaby Coronavirus, some links on how to access food if you're struggling. And of course, going to bed, getting enough sleep. We talked about that struggle of getting a good sleep. So it's okay to take a nap if you can manage to fit one in during the daytime, but balancing healthy activity with rest as well. Just a reminder that the BC liquor stores remained open except for Sundays during the pandemic, and they've been super busy. So we have to be cautious about self-medicating, because alcohol has probably more side effects and risks than benefits. It's great for making you sleepy, but it's terrible for giving you a good night's sleep and making you feel good the next day. So a lot of people find that when they have a drink, they can fall asleep well, but they wake up really early or in the middle of the night and can't go back to sleep. And then finally, go to the doctor. Don't hesitate to call your doctor if for your health needs, but also for your emotional health needs. If you're feeling really stressed, don't hesitate to talk to your family doctor. We're still around, usually by phone and video, but we do see patients in person for where it requires a physical examination. And we've taken precautions to keep you safe. And also learning to express our emotions in helpful, constructive, safe ways. So those close to you that you can count on, a group of confidants, support group. So it's harder at this time to actually physically get together with friends, but so important to reach out by phone or by video. And those that are feeling isolated, there are some links to some great connections like Burnaby Neighborhood House in North and South Burnaby, which is a great way to meet other people that might be living alone. But now you can kind of connect virtually. And of course, attend to your relationships. This is such an important part. Like when patients come in with stress, most of the time it's related to relationships. But I think the greatest tragedy that for every one of us is that people say the nicest things at our memorial service or celebration of life, but we're not there to listen to it. So the greatest tragedy is that we go through life not knowing how much people appreciated us or how much we were loved, because people kind of hold back on expressing that. We kind of hold back on thanking people when we should thank them, or telling them what a difference they make in our lives. So if you can think of somebody in your life, in your home, that makes a big difference, please tell them today and tomorrow and every day. So don't miss an opportunity to show you care. And think of and express 5 positives for any negative, because this ties into what we'll be talking about later about cognitive biases. So these are thinking traps we all fall into, and it really shapes how we interpret our situation and often our relationship. So we've kind of evolved to survive over millennia to have a negativity bias. So we look out for what's wrong in our environment. So that's why those of us that tend to be anxious, actually that's a survival strategy, and it's a quality that your ancestors have passed on to you. If they didn't have that bit of anxiety, they would fall asleep when the campfire is going. They would not run away when there was a noise in the woods and they could have been attacked by an enemy tribe. They wouldn't be alert and protect their loved ones because they wouldn't be worried about it. So it's a positive thing that we tend to be negative. So it's helped us survive. It just causes a lot of stress. So we tend to notice what's wrong more than what's right in our life. So we have to work really hard to kind of balance it out. So we see what's wrong with our partners, and that's why we see more negative things over time. Those things that we used to endear us to our partners, like that sweet little giggle, seems to be that really irritating laugh that they have. But those are the very things we're going to miss when they're gone. So to try to think of things in that way and looking at the positives again. We tend to see the negative in our world and the negative in ourselves and evaluate ourselves very negatively and critically as well. So how do you counter this natural negativity bias? Well, you need to know, this is kind of the Gottman rule from Daniel Gottman about emotional health and relationships. We need to see and hear 5 positives for every negative. So as a parent or as a partner or a roommate, the next time you want to criticize or make a demand on someone, your loved one, force yourself to come up with 5 positive things, something that you really appreciate that you want to thank them for, or a quality that really makes a difference in your life that the other person has. So because it's so hard to come up with those positives, it might keep us from mentioning that negative. But when the other person hears 5 positives for every negative, their outlook will change as well. There's nothing like someone telling you how much they appreciate you or thanking you when you thought you were feeling taken for granted. So remember that rule, the 5-to-1 rule. So it's just to counter that negativity bias the other person hears, you better come up with 5 positives for every negative. It's a great family game, but it's pretty challenging. And to know emotions are not our enemy. They are actually part of being human. And as I mentioned, they helped us survive. If we didn't have sadness, we wouldn't avoid the things that cause us pain. And if we didn't get angry, we wouldn't defend ourselves or our loved ones. And if we weren't anxious, we would never hear the alarm. We wouldn't run away from danger. And this all goes back to how the brain is constructed. So this is kind of a simplistic model of how our brains are, but it actually shows you that there's a part of our brain, in that red area, the reptilian brain, is just that flight or fight survival mode. You have to meet those needs before you can attend to the second area, that yellow portion, the limbic portion in the brain, the early mammalian brain, where we experience emotions like love and anxiety and anger and attachment. Those are really important for survival, but that sometimes seems like our enemy because that causes a lot of our suffering, how we're reacting to things. But we have this early primate portion, the neocortex, where we can rationally reflect and meditate and recognize those emotions in our situation and come out with a more balanced way of looking at things that makes us actually feel more in control and better able to control our situation. So know that we have this kind of triune brain, or brain 1.0, 2.0, and 3.0. So you've all had the upgrade with brain 3.0, and we'll talk about some of the techniques for actually engaging that programming to control our emotional responses. So there's 4 emotional health skills that I teach my kids and try to encourage my patients to practice as well. Number 1 was the self-care, looking after yourselves physically and emotionally on a daily basis, and managing stress by looking at what portions can you control and what portions you cannot control, and then knowing where you can act. That second one is meditation, or meditative practice, or prayer. The third skill is managing your thoughts. And then finally, number 4 is visualizing your goals. So meditation, I use it to calm my mind before I start a stressful day and throughout the day as things arise. It helps me really center my thoughts and to assess a situation more calmly and rationally, and to really reflect on my life. It's like looking at your compass and map rather than just following where Google Maps or your GPS is sending you. So looking at the big picture and looking at where you're going rather than being deflected by emotions or distractions. One particular way of meditating is mindfulness. So mindfulness really helps to really recenter on the present, because the opposite of mindfulness is rumination, kind of focusing on anxious, worried thoughts, focusing on angry thoughts, or just letting our mind wander. So mindfulness helps us to focus on the present moment, what we're currently experiencing, seeing, feeling, and sensing, and noticing what our emotions are. So a famous master mindfulness teacher is Thich Nhat Hanh, who was nominated for the Nobel Peace Prize by Martin Luther King. So where he used to practice was Plum Village in France, where people of all faiths would meditate, when someone chimes the meditation gong, everyone will stop what they're doing. If they're in conversation or eating or gardening or napping, they will stop when they hear the chime, and they'll think about, what am I thinking, feeling, and saying? So it helps you center again, what am I doing? So I see traffic lights as my meditation gong to stop and reflect, so I'm not driving mindlessly. Reflect on what I'm thinking and doing and experiencing right now. And I use strong emotions. If I feel the physical sensations of anger or stress or feeling down, then I use that as a time to wake up and to recognize, be mindful of where I am right now, what's triggered this, and is there another way of looking at my situation? So mindfulness is more than meditation. It actually teaches us to be in the present moment, to observe things without attaching and reacting to them. So that if I'm having a pain in my leg, I'm not catastrophizing and thinking that I have a tumor in my leg, but I recognize I have this sensation and make a note of what that sensation feels like, and as it comes and goes, and then I can properly assess what's going on in my body at that time. I'll
Would
be
still be
aware. Oh,
important right
yes,
now
yes,
to be
Jeff.
able to stay in the moment. But the hard part about it is the fact that we don't know what's going to happen next seems to make it really hard for us to be able to stay here. Is that you talked about some of the tricks you use? Are there other tricks people can use just to I like that stop sign idea or the stoplight, where it's like, how can I get to here? And because it's really easy to tell a story about all the bad things that might happen if I let my mind wander down that wormhole. And how can I pull myself back to here?
Yeah, so we all need kind of practice. I've had 40 years of practice with this. So you do start with just mindfulness of the breath. Just notice what the sensations of the breath are when you're breathing in and out. In those few moments when you have time alone, like maybe the washroom for a busy mom or dad. But that's just the start. So we can use our breath, physical sensations to direct our attention. Whenever a thought, a worried thought, or an extraneous sound pops in, we kind of note it, but then kindly, compassionately return our focus back to what you're focusing on, which could be the breath or sensations of peace in our body. And then eventually we allow our minds to recognize thoughts come and go. Our thoughts are producing like thousands of thoughts every few minutes. Most of them are the same thoughts. That's what we call rumination, and we get kind of stuck. But our brains kind of secrete thoughts, but we kind of identify and get carried away with a train of thought. And that's kind of the opposite of mindfulness. So it takes daily practice, but the easiest way to learn, actually, I'll give some references for authors, but take a look at the podcast for Jack Cornfield that I'll highlight and Tara Brock. So their podcasts help you to actually apply this mindful attitude to everyday life, everyday situations, and our emotions. And I tended to listen to the podcast while I'm getting up in the morning, um, getting my breakfast together, doing those things, listening to a podcast, and it helps me just integrate this kind acceptance of life as it is at this moment and appreciating things in my life at this moment, recognizing that everything changes, that nothing is under my total control, but that I'm still going to be okay with that I could live with things that I can't change right now because they will change in the future. And to recognize that I'm not just this small individual or ego, that I'm kind of connected with all life and all the people that I'm connected with and people that I haven't even met before. So it's an expanding perspective, but it starts with the breath. But I'd encourage you to do some reading, but most particularly the podcasts, they show you how to apply it to everyday life. And the most important thing is to be compassionate to yourself when your mind does naturally wander, which our minds do. So I hope that helps a bit, Jeff.
Yeah.
Again, these are my favorite authors, Tara Brach and Jack Cornfield. The first two have great podcasts that you can download for free and great to listen to. The new ones come up every couple of weeks. Great books by John Kabat-Zinn, Rick Hansen, the psychologist, not the man in motion, and Thich Nhat Hanh, who I mentioned as well. Very accessible, easy to understand. But the podcasts are a good, easy way to apply to everyday life and the here and now. Makes it really practical. So another way of meditating is just reflecting, checking at where you are, checking at where you are in life, the situation. Um, think about other times in the past where you were on the map and notice how you've grown and changed and learned throughout this time. We sometimes think of ourselves as unchanging individuals, but you're evolving over time and learning new things because our brains have an amazing capacity for learning. Um, I'll talk about a principle called neuroplasticity, but it's a complicated term for how our brains naturally learn new habits, but it takes effort to turn it into a new positive habit. And what we're trying to learn today is new ways of, new habits of thinking that I hope you can take away and practice. So one practice, which is not really mindfulness that I do every day, is I frame each day with thankfulness, because it's similar to finding all the positives in your life. It actually kind of sets the mode of what I'm going to be looking for throughout the day. So when I wake up, I say a prayer of thankfulness for everything in my life, and it begins with the person right next to me, my wife, and all the things she has done for me and how important she is to me and how she cares for her family. And it spreads to all the rest of my family, my patients, and all the people that have um, helped me in life, and those people that I don't know that have really contributed to society as well. And thankful for the simple things that we often take for granted, like having food on the table and having a profession to go to and a calling so that it can help other people. So framing it in thankfulness and gratitude makes me look for those positives throughout the day. And at the end of the day, at the dinner table, we have a game of just counting our blessings, what went well during the day, what we appreciate. And then at nighttime, just a prayer of thankfulness of all the things that I've learned and went well during the day. And there's always something I learn every day. So we have to actively see that positive in our lives, even this situation. And I see, in spite of all the bad things we've seen some really amazing, wonderful things we never would have predicted before. As a physician, there's been incredible thank yous from other people. There's been donations of masks when we were actually running really low on masks. So we got donations of masks so that we can give them to our patients when we come here, when they come to the office, when they need to come in for a physical exam. So just amazing generosity, people standing up wanting to make a difference. So we can see a lot of positive things. And I think we're going to come out of this so much stronger as individuals, as families, as social networks, and really as a community and nation. So is the cup half full or half empty? Well, if you practice gratitude, you see that the cup is actually overflowing, that we get so much more than we give. And I think the best game in life is try to give more than you get. And then everyone's a winner. So the third most challenging skill is managing your thoughts, because we think our thoughts just pop up and we really identify them, but we can actually fall into a lot of thinking traps, and we all do. And that's why we need to be mindful first so we don't criticize ourselves for having these intrusive or worried or anxious or angry thoughts. But they really do shape our emotions. So cognitive behavioral therapy is kind of a complicated name for a type of therapy, but it's actually what we can do as individuals ourselves to change how we feel. Because when we're feeling anxious, it really shades the thoughts. If we're feeling anxious, we're going to underestimate and really downplay our ability to manage, and we're going to overemphasize the danger and uncertainty around us. And it'll be different from what reality really is. And if we're thinking all that negativity about our own abilities, we're going to shy away from doing things and challenging ourselves, and we might just withdraw. It shapes our behavior. If we're feeling really down and depressed, then we're thinking negative thoughts about ourselves, about other people, our world, our situation, and of our future. And we're just going to see more negative things, as we saw with the negativity bias. And that's going to make us not try to do our best. It's going to make us expect the worst in other people. It might make us not give people the help that they need to feel better about themselves too. And when we're angry, that's one of the worst ones because we really identify with anger. We tend to see all the negative about the other person. We forget about all the good things that they've done for us. And we get a lot into feeling like individuals when we're really, really connected intimately and interdependent. And it'll shape our behavior. We might talk harshly or act aggressively and not in a caring, loving way. So our thoughts, emotions really influence our behavior and one another. But we do know it works the other way around. We could shape our thoughts and look at things from a different perspective. It's challenging, but we can get into these new habits of thought with that principle of what I call neuroplasticity, how we can learn new habits of thinking and reacting to things. So these thinking areas we all fall into are called cognitive biases. So it's really important not to get down on ourselves because we all do these. These are the unconscious cognitive shortcuts which can really misinterpret our reality and help us prevent us from doing the best we can. So, here's 8 common ones, and I'll go through 9 of them. But really, I actually looked it up, and there are actually over 200 different cognitive biases that we all fall into. But we'll just go over, highlight some of the key ones that are most important about how we're feeling, especially feeling depressed or anxious or angry at a partner. So the first cognitive bias or error we tend to have is emotional reasoning. That means inappropriately reasoning from how you feel. So if you're feeling really bad that something bad will happen, we really believe that terrible things are going to happen. Or if you feel that it's the end of the world, you think, well, it probably is the end of the world. So how do you balance emotional reasoning? You can answer with more balanced, positive responses like, my feelings can change, which you've learned today, and which you've recognized over time. Your feelings about things can change. They actually change from moment to moment, but we don't realize it. And you can gain a better perspective and choose your thoughts. And we'll talk more about that in a moment. Fortune telling, we all do this, assuming we really know how things are going to turn out. An example would be thinking, I'll never be able to manage these feelings, or I'll always feel this way. To balance that out, think about, I can't predict the future, but I can be ready for whatever may come. So the cognitive error of mind reading, believing you really know what the other person is thinking. You really don't. We make a lot of assumptions, and we usually make negative assumptions. For example, if your friend hasn't returned your call or your text, you assume, I know why she hasn't called me. She's angry about this, or I don't know, but she must be angry about something. Or when someone does something that you find offensive, you think that they did that deliberately to hurt you. But we can't really tell unless we actually check it out. So a more balanced thought in those cases would be, I should give others the benefit of the doubt, and maybe I can check things out and see, let them know how I felt, but find out what they were thinking, if they were thinking about that at all. Overgeneralizing, we all do, making broad assumptions based on just the facts at hand that you have, and it may not be complete facts. Examples would be thinking, I can't trust anyone, or all those people are the same. But a way to balance that is to recognize one rotten banana doesn't make the whole bunch bad, and other people are individuals with the same feelings and passions and the same kind of family relationships that I have, that other people are, though they may seem different, are just like me. Polarizing, another name is all or nothing thinking, black and white thinking, good or bad thinking. So like example is, this pandemic is a disaster. There's nothing good in the situation, but we also saw a lot of positive things that have come out of it. It's brought out the best in a lot of people and organizations. So thinking instead, my situation is not so bad. I have support that some other people don't have. And this challenge has really brought out a lot of kindness from people that I've seen every day. And then shooting, making inappropriate judgments about yourself or the people. When we see people wear masks, when we see people not wear masks, when they're wearing the mask wrong, when their nose is sticking out of the mask, we tend to be a little judgmental. And that's, again, the negativity bias kind of seeping in. Or thinking that you have to be perfect, that you have to do everything perfect. So a more balanced way of kind of countering that shoulding and that judgment would be, he may not have realized what he was doing. She's probably doing the best that she can, because we never know the other person's situation or what they're really thinking. And then personalizing, taking everything personal. He did that deliberately just to hurt me, as an example. But something more balanced would be, maybe she's having a bad day. Maybe that cashier's had a really busy day and she's not feeling well. I think I should let this go. And catastrophizing really contributes to a lot of anxiety, really believing that the worst possible thing could happen. And a lot of us have been kind of guilty of this because of the uncertainty at the beginning of the pandemic. Examples would say, I'm going to fail, I'll never be a success. I remember feeling that way when I was in junior high. My brother telling me failing or struggling on one exam or quiz won't prevent you from getting into medical school. That won't make any difference in the long term. And by the way, I didn't fail that quiz anyway, so I was just catastrophizing. Or this really is the end of the world, or I'm going to get sick and I'm going to die. But realistically, you're going to be fine. If you take just the precautions we talked about, look after yourself and see your doctor when you need to, you're going to be fine and you'll be looked after. We can also counter catastrophizing by thinking things like, I'll prepare for the worst, but I know it's not likely to happen. And I know how to stay well and I know where to get help. And I hope you're feeling this way too. That you know how to stay well and you know where help can be if you need it. Disqualifying the positive is downplaying the positive aspects of the situation or minimizing the good that you've done already. So saying that you're lucky that time rather than based on the good effort that you put into it, or thinking there's nothing good in the situation. And we've already looked at that. You are learning and you're getting better. And our family and community have really come together to help one another in this situation. So keep calm and review those cognitive distortions without being hard on yourself. So these are the favorite books I recommend to patients on learning cognitive therapy. So they're really practical books. I'll let you read these later because you'll have access to these as well. Hardwiring Happiness is the most recent one by Rick Hanson, the neuropsychologist, but really tells us what we know about how our brains work and why mindfulness and cognitive therapy really works too. So reflect on your thoughts that kind of trigger those negative emotions and ask yourself if there's another way of looking at the situation or the facts. And then more importantly, underlying the beliefs that kind of underlie those negative thoughts. Identify the cognitive distortions if you can, and then come up with more balanced thoughts. And it's sometimes helpful to bounce these ideas off of a friend and a confidant that you can trust. So the final emotional health skill is actually visualizing your goals. So in family practice, we have patients that come in with a lot of lists, maybe 5 or 6 problems, and it's actually quite a deal to look through that. But once we've dealt with the problems, I like the patients to focus on their overall health and other things that they need. So I have things on my list too. But I often will help them try to focus on their goals. So all of you have probably seen Roget's thesaurus of synonyms or antonyms. Where does that mean the same and where does that mean the opposite? But you might not have heard that Roget came up with a thesaurus because he wanted to feel better. He was feeling really sad, grieving many losses in his life, especially loved ones. So we wanted to come with words that were opposite of feeling sad or lonely or opposite of grief. So we came up with a list of antonyms like joy and peace and happiness. And coming up with those words, it helps you focus on what your real goal is, not to be free of anxiety, but to be confident and at peace, not to be free of a low mood or depression, but to be at peace, equanimous, and joyful, and engaged in life and connected to people. Not to run away from loneliness, but to feel connected and part of a bigger world to other people. So coming up with the opposite visualization of what your goal will be will turn your problems into goals. That's a little sign I put on my the wall of my office, turn your problems into goals. So visualize your goals. Instead of replaying the past or ruminating on the negative, think about what you really want. And question your core beliefs. Where do your core beliefs come from? Well, actually, they sometimes come from our experiences in the past. And they might have been appropriate in the past or what you experienced or what you heard growing up. But that's a really impressionable age. And sometimes we hold those beliefs all the way up into the present moment, and they're no longer appropriate, but they really shaped how we see ourselves in our world. So here's a couple of examples of some unquestioned assumptions and core beliefs that a lot of people, including myself and my patients, have often said to ourselves, though we know it as adults, they're not true. Like, I'm not good enough. I don't deserve to be successful. I don't deserve to be happy, or I don't deserve to be loved, or I'm powerless. Thinking I have to be perfect to be loved, I can't trust anyone, or life is unfair. These really limit our ability to see the opportunities and the positives in ourselves in our life. So question some of those beliefs. If they keep popping in your head, really challenge them in a compassionate way, not with criticism, but with thinking about who you really are and what you really want to feel. Do these core beliefs and assumptions bring you closer or further from others and closer to your goals and to your community? Do they foster positive feelings like connection and peace? Do they inspire positive actions like creativity and kindness and generosity? So I'll give you some of my more balanced positive core beliefs that I've come up with, that I use for myself, that a lot of my patients have come up with for themselves as well. And you're welcome to share them because I think they have kind of a universal truth. I am a part of a greater whole, part of a family, and a member of this community. And every one of you really is. So I really hope you embrace that. I have a unique positive potential, my gift to the world, and I believe every one of you has that too. We are dependent on one another, and every person matters. Everyone in our community matters. And I can make, and you can make a positive difference with actions that are great and even actions that are small, like a gesture of kindness, a compliment, holding the door for somebody, doing something kind. And I am continually learning and growing, and we all have that potential. And I can adapt to change, and every one of you can as well. And we're thinking these changes are only temporary and we'll all be together again. We will value what really matters and we will love one another even more than before. So just imagine how much and how meaningful you're going to be hugging your loved ones when you see them again, and how you're going to feel when you can finally get together with your friends again in person. We're going to value our friendships, our relationships, and all these things we took for granted. And I think we're going to value everyone that does all the things like builds our roads, maintains our schools, keeps the stores open, supplies our food, transporting us and transporting all the things we need to stay alive and healthy. Everyone has really made a big difference in coming together. So we're going to value each other even more. So I'd like you all to do this kind of final exercise. So we're not watching you, so you can close your eyes, and I want you to kind of engage your whole mind with positive imagery. So I want you to kind of change these crazy dreams you're getting at nighttime. And maybe tonight you can try this really deliberate exercise of visualizing your ultimate goal of where you'd like to be in the short, near future in terms of where you're feeling about yourself and about your situation, and about how we're going to come out of this and how much a better community and nation and world we're going to be once we work through this together. So relax breathing, relax all your muscles while you're breathing in relaxation, breathing out tension. Close your eyes if you'd like to. Imagine yourself in your favorite place in the whole world. And it probably isn't locked up in your room. It's probably, maybe it's a beach or a place in nature, a favorite place that you would go if you could go right now. Imagine yourself right there, feeling relaxed and at ease, no rush, no urgency to go anywhere, and really make it real. So what are you feeling and seeing? How does your body feel? What sounds do you hear? Is it warm or cool? Do you feel a breeze? What sounds do you hear when you're in your favorite place? And imagine you're in your favorite place, but also in the near future where you've been practicing being kind to yourself, gently questioning negative thinking, reframing with more positive thoughts, and turning them into action and showing appreciation to people around you and to yourself, and looking really at your strengths. So you've been practicing that for a number of months in this future state. And imagine how relaxed and calm and confident you feel and how much you've learned. And imagine how much you've shared this with other people and enhanced their lives as well. And imagine what the world is like when we're feeling that we are all responsible, no matter where we are, for people and their well-being around the world. We're responsible for our neighbor. And we can make a big difference in other people's lives, big and small, even to people that may never meet us. And every time you want to visualize yourself in your favorite place, let this be your dream, and then this be your goal. And think of all the steps you've done to get to this point. Practicing mindfulness until it becomes second nature, kind of reflecting in your life and saying positive things, 5 positive things for every negative that pops into your mind, to yourself and to the people around you. Okay, if your eyes are closed, you can open them. So all of this is actually based on science, what we call neuroplasticity. So your brain isn't plastic, but our neurons, although we have a limited number of neurons, we have so many neurons, and it's their connections to one another is how we learn. So when you learn a new skill like driving, using the computer, using your new smartphone, it's hard at first, but if you practice it many times, it becomes second nature, almost as if it's hardwired. That's the way our thinking is. So we get out of habits by practicing deliberately new habits to get to our goals. And when we practice them enough, new ways of thinking, new ways of reflecting on our life, it really transforms our minds. And that's how we learn over time. It was a Canadian neuropsychologist that said, neurons that fire together, wire together. And one of my favorite shows, Marvel Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., last season premieres tomorrow, but I transformed into agents of positive change. So I'm recruiting you to be an agent of positive change in your own life, in your community, with your family, your friends, the people you can touch, and in your world. Because be the change you wish to see. That's what Gandhi said. But I'd like you to see the change you wish to be, really visualize it. So I have more tips on my own blog, davidicuswong.wordpress.com, and those resources we talked about, Jeff will kind of highlight them in a moment. You can find them on the Divisions website, divisionsbc.ca/Burnaby. But I want to leave with you these 3 things to remember. You're not alone in how you're feeling, and there's support for you. You have the strength and support to make it through. And together we're going to come out stronger and more connected than ever. So I'd like to turn it over to Jeff to highlight these resources again that I'd like you to check out for yourself, even if you don't need them right away, to see if they might benefit people that you're in touch with.
Great. Thanks, Dave, and thanks so much for that presentation. It was broad and it was deep, and it gave us some tools to deal with where we are right now, but also for me at least, and I know for others, something to think about how we move forward because we have a world that is not going to stop changing, and having a roadmap to staying happy and healthy within it. That's a great thing. You mentioned some of the resources, the BurnabyCoronavirus.com, which does have a broad depth of the resources that are available to folks in Burnaby as they work through the pandemic and beyond. And those resources are around social supports and some of the things you talked about connecting with people. There's actually quite a bit of opportunity to do that if you stretch out and you click on some of those links. Dave, you also gave us an awful lot of actual resources. I know that people were asking about some of the people you were referring to and some of those reference points, and they're all in this presentation, and certainly we will be able to share those with folks afterwards. You will get an email that has a link to the video that you can both go to and share with your friends, and again to those resources. And again, I just want to, we're kind of at time, but I want to again thank you, Dave, so much for your time and give you one last word.
Well, I actually want to thank Jeff because he's been so helpful with the Burnaby doctors in giving us a lot of his wisdom. He's shared a lot of wisdom that help us to make decisions that are really helping the Burnaby community, and we really wouldn't be where we are without Jeff's guidance and assistance. So thanks, Jeff, for your wisdom.
Well, thank you. And thanks everybody for attending. Again, if you have further questions, you can email them back to the original invitation, and we'll do our best to make sure we get answers out to you. Good night, everybody.
Good night.